I hired Cassian to build a deck. That's it. Just a simple deck off the back of my house, where I could put a grill and maybe some chairs. I'd just bought the place 3 months earlier, a small craftsman bungalow that needed work but had good bones, and the backyard was basically a rectangle of overgrown grass with a chain-link fence. I got his name from a flyer at the hardware store. Cassian Torres, it said, with a phone number and the words, "Quality carpentry, reasonable rates" in a plain font. No website, no Instagram portfolio, just a phone number. Something about that appealed to me. Old school, honest. When he showed up for the estimate, I was immediately aware of him in a way that made me nervous. He was maybe 30, a few years older than me, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and these incredibly focused brown eyes that seemed to catalogue everything. He wore a faded blue t-shirt and work pants with actual wear on them, not the fashionable kind. Walked around to the backyard and I walked around to the backyard and I explained what I wanted. Something simple, 10 by 12. Composite decking so I wouldn't have to maintain it. He nodded, made notes on a small pad he pulled from his pocket, asked about my budget. Then he looked at my house, then at the yard, then at the houses on either side and behind me. He was quiet for a long moment. "Can I make a suggestion?" he asked. His voice was low and careful, like he didn't want to overstep. I told him sure. "A patio would work better here," he said. "Pavers, probably flagstone. It would flow better with your house style and you could make it bigger for the same budget. Plus you've got that slope issue." He pointed at something I hadn't noticed, a slight grade in the yard. "Deck would need more support posts. Patio, we just level it out." I'll be honest, I didn't really care about decks versus patios. I just wanted somewhere to sit outside. But the way he explained it made sense, and there was something about the way he looked at my house. Really looked at it, like he was seeing what it could be. So I said, "Okay." He said he'd draw up plans and get me a quote. We shook hands again and he left. I watched him walk around the side of my house to his truck, and I had this strange feeling in my chest that I couldn't name. It wasn't until later that night, lying in bed, that I let myself acknowledge what it was: attraction. Pure and simple and completely inconvenient. I'm not someone who's ever been in the closet exactly. I came out in college, dated a few guys, had a couple of relationships that didn't work out. But I'd moved to this neighbourhood specifically because it felt quiet and anonymous, a place where I could just be myself without making it a whole thing. I work from home doing software consulting. I didn't know my neighbours. I liked it that way. The idea of being attracted to my contractor felt like a complication I didn't need. The quote came 2 days later, delivered in person. Cassian knocked on my door in the late afternoon, and I invited him in. He'd drawn actual plans, not just a sketch, with measurements and a materials list. He walked me through everything, pointing at the paper with a pencil. His hands moved with precision. I found myself watching his hands more than the plans. Whole yard, and you get western sun in the whole yard, and you get western sun in the evening. That's when you'll actually use it. I agreed to everything. The price was fair. We set a start date for the following Monday. He stood to leave and paused at my door. "I live right behind you, actually," he said, pointing vaguely toward the back. 2 streets over, the blue house with the white trim. "If you ever need anything or have questions while I'm working, I'm around." He said it casually, like it was just useful information. I thanked him and he left. After he was gone, I walked through my house to the back window and looked out. I couldn't see a blue house from there, just the houses on the street directly behind mine, but knowing he lived close by did something to me. Made the attraction feel more real, more possible, also more terrifying. Unloaded equipment and got to work. I unloaded equipment and got to work. I tried to focus on my own work inside, but I kept finding excuses to check on the progress. Getting water, taking a break, looking out the window. I wasn't being subtle. By Wednesday, I'd admitted to myself that I was watching him. The way he moved, the way he knelt down to check levels, the way he lifted heavy stones like they weighed nothing, the way sweat made his shirt cling to his back by midday. On Thursday, Marco didn't show up. Cassian explained that the kid had a family thing. He'd be working alone for a couple days. He said it apologetically, like it might bother me. I told him it was fine. It was more than fine. It was dangerous. Because now when I brought him water, which I'd started doing every afternoon, it was just the 2 of us. We started talking, real talking. Told me he'd learned from his grandfather, but then it expanded. He asked what I did for a living, asked how he got into carpentry. He told me he'd learned from his grandfather, that he'd gone to college for a year but hated it, that building things with his hands was the only work that ever felt right. There was something in the way he said it, a kind of quiet certainty that made my chest tight. On Friday afternoon, I brought him water, and he was sitting on the ground taking a break. The patio was really taking shape. You could see what it was going to be. He'd been right about everything, the placement, the flow, all of it. I sat down near him, not too close, and we drank water in the heat. "You were right about the western sun," I said. "This is going to be perfect." He smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from him. It changed his whole face, made him look younger. "I'm glad," he said. Then he looked at me for a moment longer than necessary. Just a moment, but I felt it everywhere. That weekend I barely slept. I kept replaying that look, trying to decide if I'd imagined something in it or if it was real, trying to decide what I wanted it to be. By Monday morning when he came back, I'd convinced myself I was reading into things. He was just a friendly guy, professional, good at his job, that's all. Marco was back too, which helped. It gave me distance. I stayed inside and worked and tried not to think about Cassian's hands or his smile or the way he said my name, Nathan, with a slight emphasis on the second syllable that nobody else used. The patio was finished by Wednesday of the second week. It was beautiful. Better than I'd imagined. Flagstone in irregular shapes fitted together like a puzzle, a border of darker stone, everything level and solid and perfect. Cassian walked me through it, pointing out details. He'd built in a small step down from my back door. He'd graded everything so water would drain away from the house. He'd left space on one side for a garden bed if I ever wanted to plant something. The care in every decision was obvious. "It's incredible," I told him. "Seriously, this is better than anything I pictured." He looked pleased. Marco started loading equipment into the truck. Cassian said he'd send me a final invoice, that I could pay whenever, no rush. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. The job was done. He'd leave and I'd probably never see him again except maybe in passing at the hardware store. The thought made me feel hollow. "Thank you," I said. "Really, you did amazing work." He nodded. Looked like he was going to say something. Didn't. Got in his truck and drove away. I spent that evening sitting on my new patio feeling sorry for myself. The sun set exactly where he'd predicted it would. Golden light flooding the space. It was perfect. I was alone. That night I couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way he'd looked at my house like it mattered. About his careful hands. Amount was exactly what he'd quoted. At amount was exactly what he'd quoted. At the bottom, in handwriting, he'd added, "Hope you enjoy it. You have my number if you ever need anything. Cassian." I stared at those words. You have my number. Was that just professional courtesy? Or was it an opening? I wanted it to be an opening so badly that I couldn't trust my own interpretation. I paid the invoice that weekend, added a generous tip, wrote a note. "Thank you again. The patio is perfect. I'm out here every evening." I almost added something more. Almost wrote, "I'd love to buy you a beer sometime," or "Let me know if you ever want to see how it turned out," or something. Anything to keep the connection alive. But I lost my courage and just signed my name. 3 days later, on a Wednesday evening, I was sitting on the patio with a beer watching the sunset when I heard a voice from the back corner of my yard. "Nathan?" I looked up, and there was Cassian standing at my fence. My heart started pounding. "Hey," I said, standing up. "Sorry to just show up," he said. He looked nervous. "I was walking my dog and I realized I could see your patio from the path behind your house. Wanted to check it out in actual use." I walked over to the fence. There was a walking path I'd never paid attention to, one of those neighborhood easements between properties, and sure enough, from that angle, you could see my entire patio clearly. "Oh," I said. Then I realized what that meant. "Wait, is that why you positioned it this way?" The words came out before I could think about them. He looked embarrassed. Looked down. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know that's weird. I'm sorry, I noticed you when you first moved in. I've walked past your house probably 50 times. When you called me for the estimate, I couldn't believe it. And then when I was planning the patio, I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe I'd get to see you using it sometimes, from a distance. I know that sounds creepy." My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "You noticed me," I said. He looked up at me then, and his eyes were vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "Yeah," he said, I noticed you." We stared at each other across the fence. The evening light was golden. Everything felt suspended. "I noticed you too," I said. "The whole time you were working here, I could barely focus on anything else." His expression changed. Relief and hope and something warmer. "Really?" he asked. "Really," I said. "I've been sitting out here every night kind of devastated that I'd never see you again." He laughed, and it was a surprised, genuine sound. "I've been walking past your house twice a day like a stalker, hoping to catch a glimpse of you." I gestured toward my back gate. "Do you want to come in?" I asked. "Or is your dog going to be upset?" He grinned. "I don't have a dog," he admitted. "I just needed an excuse to walk past." I laughed, opened the gate. He came into my yard and we stood there on the patio he'd built facing each other. Up close, I could see that he was nervous too, that his hands were shaking slightly, that he wanted this as much as I did. "So, you built this patio facing your walking route so you could see me sitting on it?" I asked. "That's kind of insane," he nodded. "Completely insane," he agreed. "I was going to just keep walking past forever, never say anything, just watch you be happy on this patio I built for you." The way he said, "for you," made something in my chest crack open. "I'm glad you stopped," I said. "I'm glad you said something." We stood there as the sun finished setting. Then, because one of us had to do it, I reached out and took his hand, his calloused, careful hand that had built this beautiful space. He squeezed my fingers. "I was terrified you were straight," he said quietly. "I was terrified you weren't interested," I replied. He smiled. "So we're both idiots," he said. "Apparently," I agreed. He stayed for hours that night. We sat on the patio and talked about everything. His family, my family, why we both ended up in this neighborhood, what we wanted from life. It was easy in a way I'd never experienced before, like talking to someone who already understood me. When he finally left, close to midnight, he kissed me at the gate, soft and careful and full of promise. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow," he agreed. "That was 4 months ago. He's here most nights now." We cook dinner together and eat on the patio he built, the patio that faces the path where he used to walk hoping to see me. Sometimes I think about how close we came to never saying anything, how I could have just paid his invoice and that would have been it, how we could have kept walking past my house in silence forever. The thought makes me hold him tighter. Last week he brought over a set of plans. "What's this?" I asked. He looked nervous again, the same way he'd looked that evening at the fence. "Plans for a pergola," he said, "to go over the patio for shade and maybe string lights." He paused. "If you want. I'd do it for free. I just like building things for you." I looked at the plans, detailed and careful, just like everything he does. "On one condition," I said. "What's that?" he asked. "You let me help," I said. "I want to build something with you." The look on his face was everything. We start construction next weekend. I don't know anything about building pergolas, but I know I want to learn from him. I know I want to create something together, something we can sit under on summer evenings, in this space that brought us together, this patio that he built facing his walking path, hoping for exactly this. Sometimes the most important construction projects aren't the ones you plan. Sometimes they're the ones that happen when someone looks at your empty yard and sees possibility, when they position things just right, hoping for connection, when they take a chance on showing up at your fence one evening and admitting the truth. I hired Cassian to build a deck. Instead, he built a patio facing his house, and, without either of us quite meaning to, we built something else entirely. Something that feels like home in a way my house never did before. Something that feels like the beginning of everything I didn't know I was looking for.